To get the most out of EQ, there's a range of very effective techniques. When you learn them all, one at a time, with me, you'll have all the EQ strategies you need to succeed. Broad and smooth. Let's begin with a crucial concept to understand, which is the idea that EQ is not free. Now, what do I mean when I say EQ is not free? Back in the times of analog hardware EQ, the number of EQ bands you had access to was restricted by the physical limitations of the gear that you were using. So if you wanted more EQ bands, you needed more gear. So EQ bands could get quite pricey. Now, even plug-in EQs in the early days had very few bands, and the computers of the day, they weren't fast and they weren't powerful, not compared to today's computers. And so you had access to a limited number of EQ bands again. However, today, the average computer runs far more EQs than you're ever likely to need. And so the assumption, lots of people think they can run unlimited EQs at no cost. The truth is, EQ is not free. There is a cost to EQ, and that is a cost to sound quality. And that's mostly a hidden cost in that it's not always obvious that there is a cost to sound quality, but I can prove it. Have a listen to these drums. If I make a thin boost, you can hear an artifact. You can hear a clear resonance. Now this resonance is a ringing sound, which means that it is a residual effect. Now what I mean by that is the EQ is producing an artifact that occurs after the audio event. So if you want a visual representation of EQ artifacts, you can use an impulse. An impulse is an instantaneous burst of sound that lasts the smallest unit of time at the sample rate. It's literally the quickest spike of audio possible, and it sounds like this. Now if you EQ an impulse, you can hear very clearly the resonance. Now if you were to render the EQ'd impulse, you'd be able to see the residual effect as a tail on the waveform. Now it's important to understand, this residual effect is not the result of a bug or a glitch. There's no defect with the plugin that's causing this. All EQs produce artifacts. All EQs produce a ringing residual effect. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're boosting, it doesn't matter whether you're cutting, it doesn't matter whether it's hardware, analog, it makes no difference. There's no escape. EQ is not free. Even linear phase EQ. In fact, linear phase EQ in some ways is worse, because with linear phase EQ, not only do you get the post-ringing effect after the audio event, you also get a pre-ringing before the event occurs. So, very dangerous stuff. So this leads us to two very important questions. Firstly, how much do EQ artifacts matter? And secondly, is there a cure? Isotope Ozone can help us to answer these questions. There's an options panel within which an equalizer tab with the option to show extra curves, and you'll see now we have a curve for phase delay, we have a curve for phase response, and we have a curve for group delay. These are linked to artifacts caused by EQ. The thing to remember is that if the EQ curve is flat, so are the curves for phase delay, phase response, and group delay, meaning there's no artifacts. So, I've spent hours upon hours studying EQ artifacts, and the visuals have confirmed three things. Firstly, that all EQ introduces artifacts, no matter whether that's big boost, big cut, small cut, high pass, low pass, shelve. The second thing is that when your curve is broad and smooth, there are fewer artifacts. The third thing is when the curve is steep, spiky and drastic, there are more artifacts. So what does all this mean? Well, firstly, it means we have to be careful with our EQ choices. Broader and smoother is generally safer and more transparent. So does that mean that we should only ever exclusively use broad and smooth curves?
Hell no!
Broad and smooth is just one strategy of many. You have to be flexible and adaptive if you want world-class results. Hence,
Way of the EQ Chameleon.
I'll see you next time.